There are no approval of the prior meeting minutes, is that correct? Looks like there's nothing to approve.
You did have the minutes of your July 1.
Oh, you're correct.
Sorry, might be having some microphone issues. Give us, just a moment.
Ours is working.
I think we're getting there now, maybe, perhaps. Can you hear me?
I can.
Pretty faint.
Yeah. Give us just...
So I do see we have prior minutes, so I'll go ahead and keep that moving. Now on to the approval of the minutes of the prior meeting dated July 1st, 2025. Do we have a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the City of Rolling Meadows Planning and Zoning Commission for Tuesday, July 1st, 2025.
Motion by Commissioner Gerken. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Modi. By voice vote, all in favor, please state yes.
Yes.
Yes. All opposed, please state no. With 5 yeses and 0 nos, the minutes of the prior meeting dated July 1st, 2025 are so approved. Now on to one item of pending business, which is a public hearing for a special use permit amendment for indoor athletic facility at 3660 Edison Place. Petitioner Legion Football Club. I understand that staff is requesting that this item be continued to the next meeting in September 2025 for further preparation of the materials and working with petitioners. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Great. And I understand the public hearing is still open in that matter, and we're continuing it, correct?
That's correct. If anyone's here that would like to give
Correct.
testimony, you should accept it and then continue to hear.
Sure. So if anyone is here from the public that wishes to provide testimony or comment on this matter, even though we're not prepared to hear it on the merits, since you're here tonight, if that's what you're here for, you're more than welcome to come to the podium and provide testimony. Yes, ma'am.
I got a question.
Can you get a step to the
What
Can you-
kind of grading, once they put in?
Could you
that-
stop, ma'am? Sorry. We have to follow some formalities here, if you don't mind, because everything's being recorded and there's a transcript being prepared. So do you have a question on this matter?
I'm asking what kind of grading they're gonna put in once they put the
Okay.
addition on.
Can I stop you there? I'm gonna have to ask for your name, your first and last name, and spell your last name and provide your address.
Mary Olson, Olson,
And address, please.
2804 Mill Creek, Rolling Meadows.
And what is your relation, if at all, to the petitioner? Are you a neighbor or?
Pardon?
Are you a neighbor to the petitioner, or are you?
I
interested
live
party?
across street, kitty corner across street from the people that the addition would back up to their
Oh.
house.
I think that's a separate matter. We're not there yet. This is something different.
So go sit down.
Yeah, you'll have to, we're
Okay.
gonna do this in order, so.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else here for this, this pending matter for 3660 Edison Place? Doesn't look like it. So can I have a motion to continue the public hearing in this matter till the next meeting on September 2nd, 2025?
I'll make a motion to continue the hearing for the special use permit amendment for 3660 Edison Place, Legion Inc., Legion Football Club.
Motion by Commissioner Gerken. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Furstein. By voice vote, all in favor, please state yes.
Yes.
Yes. All opposed, please state no. With 5 yeses and 0 nos, the motion to continue the public hearing until the next meeting on September 2nd, 2025 is so granted, and the public hearing will continue until that time, assuming the matter's ready then. Now we have, and ma'am, we'll call you up shortly. you're coming up in a few minutes. So we have 5 matters of new business. The first being a public hearing for a special use permit for outdoor business activities at 5300 Newport Drive. Petitioner, Party Time, HDO, DBA, Pro M National Events. This is a special use permit that would authorize the expansion and operation of storage activities at the subject property. So is petitioner here tonight? Please step forward, sir. So we've read the packet, we're familiar with the petition. Now's your opportunity, once we swear you in, to provide any summaries or elaboration that you will. We can ask you questions, and then we'll hopefully vote on the merits to make a recommendation up or down on the matter. So please state your name and spell your first and last name.
My name is Toby Itano. That's Tobyitano. I'm the Vice President of Operations for Party Time HDO, also Pro M, at 5300 Newport Drive.
Great. Please proceed.
Actually, just here to request the special use permit to allow us to store materials outside. And we've secured the proper approvals from the Army Corps of Engineers, the Illinois EPA, the Illinois Department of Natural Resources and Water Resources, and also the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicagoland, as well as the Christopher Burke, the engineering firm that had approved the use of this. And I'm actually here to answer any questions that you might have in terms of how we plan to use it or
Sure.
any other implications.
Thank you, sir. Can you make sure to speak into the microphone
Oh, sure.
a little bit more, because we're recording this? Any questions from commissioners?
So I see that the screening in the back is you have a 14-foot fence with vegetation facing to the rear, so that blocks anything from the people in the back there, is that correct?
That is correct.
And then you have a 7-foot side yard fence with screening, but I don't see the screening going up all the way. It looks, what, like halfway?
On the side, that is correct. I don't know the exact height of that fencing. I believe that the engineers had documented that. I can, if that is still a concern, I can have that measured and come back at a future
Now, I'm
time.
just wondering, is there anything facing that way that so that people can see exactly what's in there? Do you know?
I don't know. There's just the, I don't know the height of the fence, but there are fences that block in that half of our parking area,
Okay.
which is where we plan to use as the storage.
Now, since you are putting up additional, hopefully additional pallets and stuff like that, is there gonna be additional security measures? Somebody could climb that fence really easy to get in?
These are very heavy frames that we're storing there. I would say they're probably 80 pounds that are going to be stored on these storage racks. Not a lot of value to anyone that doesn't know what they are.
Okay.
Staging frames, basically, for music.
But I'm just saying, for
festival.
safety issues, if somebody comes in, just for the heck of it, you know, because like I said, that's.
Sure.
Are you considering putting up any cameras to kind of, you know, watch the area at night?
We can, if that's a requirement, we certainly can.
Okay.
It's just because of the low value of the property that we're storing there. It's hadn't been considered there before, but
Okay.
we certainly can do that.
All right, that's the only questions I have.
So there were a lot of approvals from a lot of entities. And the reasons for all of those, I mean, it was Army Corps of Engineers and MWRD. How are all of those
Because
involved?
Salt Creek runs along the backside there, so the you know, in terms of water displacement and flood, the flood water was a concern.
Floodplain.
So that was why we had to have the civil engineers involved to make
Okay.
sure that the displacement wasn't great enough so that it creates a floodwater issue if that ever were to happen in the, I think it's the 100-year flood or whatever they.
Familiar with Salt Creek, so that good job getting all of those approved and going through all of those rules.
Anything else? The materials, are they fairly static in terms of, could there be more in any given month or less, or are they kind of
Actually, so
always
we
in
have-
flux, or?
It is somewhat in seasonal.
Okay.
In that, we are an event service, so when music festivals in the spring our activity level does start to pick up. Summer, we're very busy, and then fall, it starts to taper off again.
Okay,
All these are outdoor activities pretty much.
sure. And you were already operating this with outdoor storage without a permit before, correct?
So we have them stored on trailers right now, and this would be to put actual racking up that we can store these more safely.
But I believe you need a special use to store these items outside to begin with. Is that right? Maybe that's a question for staff. Because I think you were already in non-conformity, and then somebody discovered you needed this. Is that correct?
I believe so. That was before my time.
Okay.
Because I've only been there 2 years now, and I believe when they first ran into this situation, that was 3 years ago, in which case they ceased operations, brought in the trailers so that it would be more temporary.
Okay,
And so we're seeking a permanent storage for this.
sure. Glenn, you can cover it during your presentation if you want, or?
Ms. Gerstung will actually be covering the presentation here in short, and we can take questions after the staff presentation, but this is just, this is something Mr. Atano inherited on his side. This is something I inherited on my side. This is a very curious situation that the folks at Pro-Am, I think, stumbled into. Didn't know, I think, in good faith that they were stumbling into it, and it has just taken a while to correct other issues in their building and then this issue. So they have been operating, not legally conforming. We've been working with them, and I think Mr. Atano and the others there have been reasonably diligent in moving this along to the point where we can bring it to you. So notwithstanding the length of time, we'd encourage you to take this as
Sure.
you would any other application.
Sure. So you understand, sir, like when you're making big changes like this, there may be zoning implications.
Absolutely.
May not be readily apparent or intuitive, and so I would just say when in doubt, call city staff. They'll be more than happy to walk you through any issues and get you to the right place.
I appreciate that.
Great.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir. Report from staff.
Okay, so I guess we'll get started. So, as Mr. Tano said, looking for a special use permit to operate this outdoor storage at 5300 Newport Drive. So, currently, the property is zoned M1 Business Park. It's surrounded by more business park on the north, south, and west sides. Like he mentioned, Salt Creek runs directly on the eastern border of the property, which consists of two adjoining parcels and one building, and the outdoor storage is located in the southeast corner there. So under N1, outdoor storage is required. It falls under the outdoor business activity use, and it is required as a special use in N1. So a little bit about the history of the site. So the applicant, like you said, has been operating since 2022. At some point, started to operate outdoor storage there. There's a little bit more in the staff report regarding why this was going on, but essentially what we want to focus on is just getting it up to code. So the outdoor storage falls under certain standards, especially relating to screening. So they do things like prohibiting semi-trailers and trucks as permanent storage, and then also some setbacks. So a side yard setback of 15 feet and a rear yard setback of 25 feet for any outdoor storage materials. And then that also requires screening from the right-of-way and adjacent lots with a screening height of 6 feet. So the existing outdoor storage does meet that requirement of 6 feet. That was a question. I believe the fence on the south side there is 7 feet. Yeah. And then over on the east side there, it's 14 feet from the screening from the residential. There's also, you can see there, it's pretty thick vegetation, so you, like you said, you can't really see much storage from the residential area. There were some concerns with the fact, I mean, you can see, especially from the south side, some of that outdoor storage material. But the proposed changes to the site are intended to mitigate some of that, especially the fact is that they're too close into the setback. Those will be moved back. But yeah, and then this was also, again, triggered by the fact that this is existing in a floodplain, and that's been mitigated, got all the proper approvals. So the proposed changes are just continuing to operate outdoor storage, but then adding 6 industrial storage racks in line with the bulk and setback requirements. And they'll be located 15 feet from the side yard property line along the western wall, and then removing some of those more permanent materials from the rear property line away from the residential. And then again, there is a fence that separates the storage from the parking and access. And then some of the storm and flood mitigation, there's storage racks that are installed above the floodplain, so there's not a concern about, you know, storage materials being potentially, you know, blown away in a flood or anything like that. And then this is just a site plan with some of the storage racks highlighted for the proposed site plan, not the existing one. And yeah, based on all of that, seems to follow the special use requirements, so staff does recommend approval for the petition.
Thank you. Any questions of staff?
So this is basically in a manufacturing area except for the back end where there's residential, correct?
That's correct.
I do have one more question for the petitioner.
So do I. So, could you comment?
Yeah, if you could come back up.
Go ahead.
I was just looking at this on Google Maps and saw that there is some residential. When will you be loading and unloading this, and is there a noise issue? Does the residences know that this is going to be happening, and could it be after hours, you know, like late night, or would it interrupt, you know?
And to be honest with you, we do have some of the residents that have shared, you know, some of the issues with the noise. And what we've done is we've instituted on our actual bill of ladings that we provide to the legal contract between our transportation companies and ourselves. We've stated that they cannot stay on property, that they have to turn their vehicles off, and that's been the main concern, when they keep their vehicles on to, you know, keep their electrical services running at odd hours, and they really don't need to be on our property. They need to be at a rest stop. And we've made that clear now. But occasionally we do have some of those drivers that don't pay attention to that, and so we have to correct that and make sure that that's, and that's actually outside of this area that we're talking about, that they have a tendency to park their vehicles.
Yeah, I think that does for certain need to be monitored, and, you know, just for the residents' sake.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. It's not part of the zoning issue per se, but yeah, it's related, and so if you could keep any complaints
Absolutely.
non-existent, hopefully. And then the materials are going to be, in the one picture from the viewing from the south, it looked like the materials are a pretty decent amount higher than the fence. I understand with the racks, if I read the application right, or the report, that should result in maybe the materials not being quite as high once they're placed on the stacks. Is that right?
Well, actually, we'll have the storage racks that will be storing these frames that I was describing earlier. They will actually be higher than the current trailers that were.
So in this picture, once the racks get in there and the materials are on there, it'll be even higher than the fence is.
That's correct.
Okay. So staff, I understand there was some discussion in the report or a question about, you know, is there any desire by the commission to impose a higher fence requirement to shield kind of the overhang, if you will, or the excess materials over the fence, even though that's not, that would in itself be a variance, as I understand it. Is that right?
And the side that it's facing is actually the side that faces the manufacturing of our neighbors that are manufacturing.
Sure, it's not a residential, right. So I don't know, I'm just throwing it out to the commission, is there any appetite to discuss that or require a higher fence? I don't personally believe there is, given the circumstances and the low impact on the surrounding community.
Well, probably
But-
what we could put in the condition to see, once it's installed, if they get complaints about the material being so high and people seeing it, then they would have to install additional fencing. That would be my suggestion. As part of the
Sure.
approval. And if they get complaints once this new racking is in and the residents see it and they don't like it, then they would have to install additional shielding.
Is that something, staff, that would be appropriate for the order? To actually require, which they would have to come in for another variance, unless we build it in now, which I don't know if that's worth it.
Yeah, building it in, so we haven't noticed a variation, right? So you couldn't grant that tonight. There'd have to be
Yep.
more process, I believe. It'd be an unorthodox condition, but I've worked with some like it before, usually land banked parking. Ms. Wolf, would you like to add anything?
I think from a legal perspective, that would be a difficult thing to do. The condition that should be placed upon the special use is something that should be recommended as the situation stands today and based upon the information that's put forward via the application. It would be, once the permit is granted by the city council, if that is granted, it would be allowed for that particular use. So to have a hypothetical situation be a part of a condition would be very difficult to implement, and I think that would be an unusual condition that I would not recommend.
Okay.
I would recommend
Sure.
that the commission make a recommendation based upon, the
Yeah.
information that you have before.
Sure, no, that makes sense, just thought we'd ask. And so
Yeah.
obviously, if there are complaints of neighbors, in my view, that'll work itself out. I mean, the city will hear about it, and then maybe the city would be able to work with you to rectify those complaints and address concerns, which could include all the way up to coming in again for a application for another variance to put in a higher fence. But to me, I think that would just kind of work itself out if there are any complaints.
No, that's fine.
Okay,
I would agree.
okay. You
I
guys
do
good?
want to also
Okay.
quickly add that
Yes,
the racks are higher, but they also, you can see from that picture there, they're way into the setback, so they would be pushed back to the 15-foot requirement, so that will make them less visible
Okay.
from the right of way.
so you understand the concerns, sir, just the impact on the community and unsightliness, and even though it is a manufacturing area, if you could just be mindful of that.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions of staff or petitioner? Okay, anybody from the public here wish to provide comment or testimony on this matter? Okay, hearing none, I would now, can I have a motion then to close the public hearing in the matter?
A motion to close the public hearing in the matter of the special use permit for outdoor business activities, permanent in compliance with 12276 for 5300 Newport Drive.
Motion by Commissioner Gherkin. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Burchert. We'll give you that one. By voice vote, all in favor, please state yes.
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 All opposed,
Yes.
please state no. 5 yeses and 0 nos. The motion carries and the public hearing in the matter is now closed. I see we have a sample motion prepared by staff. Are there any changes to be discussed or recommended by commission? Hearing none, can I then have a motion for recommendation to approve the petition and the findings?
I'll go for it. I recommend that the Planning and Zoning Commission special use permit for outdoor business activities permanent in compliance with 122-76 5300 Newport Drive Based upon the submitted petition and testimony presented, I move that the Rolling Meadows Planning and Zoning Commission make the findings of fact by the petitioner attached to here as Exhibit 2 and recommend the City Council approve the special use permit as set forth in the draft ordinance.
Motion by Commissioner Gherkin. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Furstein. Staff, could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Burchett,
Yes.
Commissioner Furstein,
Yes.
Commissioner Gargan,
Yes.
Commissioner Murdy,
Yes.
Chair Buckingham.
I'm a yes as well. I believe the standards as reflected in the packet have been clearly met. So I'm a yes, and that's with 5 yeses and 0 nos. The motion for recommendation to approve this petition is granted tonight and will be forwarded to the City Council for first reading at their next meeting on August 26th. That concludes matter 1. Thank you, sir. Good luck. Matter 2 is a public hearing regarding a residential variance at 2806 Deerfield Lane. Petitioner Adnan Dar. This requested variance of a side yard setback and floor area ratio would authorize a second-story addition above garage and the construction of an attached garage. Staff has proper notice been given, and is the file in order?
It is and it is, sir.
Thank you. Can I have a motion then to open the public hearing in the matter and to enter the staff report into the record?
I'll motion to open the public hearing and enter the staff report for the residential variances at 2806 Deerfield Lane.
Motion by Commissioner Gherkin. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Furstein. By voice vote, all in favor, please state yes.
Yes.
Yes. All opposed, please state no. With 5 yeses and 0 nos, the motion carries and the matter is now open. I would call upon the petitioner to present her request, and we're familiar with the packet. Now's your opportunity to summarize or provide any elaboration. We can ask you questions.
Sure.
So-
Do you need me to state my name
Yes,
and
could you
spell?
please state your name, spell your first and last, and provide your address?
Sure. Tamara Dar, Tamara, Dar, Darr, and my address is 2806 Deerfield Lane.
Great.
Um,
Please proceed. Oh, I have to swear you in. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Please proceed.
My husband sends his apologies. He's the official petitioner, but he took a tumble and is recovering from some injuries at home today. So
Nothing serious, we hope.
a couple cracked ribs, but he will be okay. So,
Wow.
so
Sorry to hear that.
no, I know he's more familiar with this than I am, but really, we just wanted to come before you today to thank you for taking this into consideration. We moved into our home in 2020 from Palatine. We love the neighborhood. We want to make Rolling Meadows, this is our forever home. So in order to make the home more functional for our family, we asked for this variance so that we can do the addition above the garage and the third car garage.
Okay. Any questions?
Just out of curiosity, have you asked any of your neighbors, have they said anything about the addition onto the garage?
Yes, so we had conversation with our neighbor who would be directly next door, to the north, and they did provide a letter of support, which I believe has been submitted.
Okay.
But no other complaints or
Not that we
that you're
have.
aware of?
We've
Okay.
not that we're aware of.
Okay.
And so this is gonna be above the garage?
So we'll have, there's attic space currently above the garage, so we will be using that space to extend our master bath and closet. And then also set back, we would do a third car garage.
Okay. Thank you very much.
And the
Mm.
third car garage will actually be a separate structure set back a little
Correct.
bit, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And I think this was in the packet. Was there any way for you with the architects, if you used one, to put in that third car garage without having to request for this variance?
So we are.
Unless it's a little tiny garage, I guess, but.
We are working to get the survey from 1978 is different than the survey that we got from 2020, and so there's a difference there. So we're working to rectify that, but just to keep the project moving, we're asking for the variance.
Okay, so the answer to the question would be there might be a way to do a third car garage without requesting a variance, or you're not sure?
I'm unclear. Again, I'm less familiar than my husband is with the material, but
Sure. Okay, we can hear from staff
Sure,
when the
sure.
time comes, so they may have something to say on that.
It's only 10 feet on that side, right? So even
Yeah.
a driveway is.
Right.
I can answer that directly if
Sure.
you'd like.
So let's, anything else of petitioner?
no.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Starr. We may
Thank
call you
you.
back up.
Sure.
Mr. Savage, go ahead.
Yeah, so in working with the applicant on this, this question came up a few times, and from what I understand, the architect and the applicant had discussed several ways that they could have a detached garage set further back into the rear of the property that would be within the setback, the allowed setback. For a detached garage, it's actually 2.5 feet, whereas for an attached, it's 10 feet. In this case, there are some drainage problems further back on the lot that wouldn't make it suitable for that kind of addition, and so this was, I guess, the compromise on that. Hence, requesting the variance on that.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Savage, from the staff's perspective, or whoever's presenting?
Nothing additional before the presentation.
Or the presentation, I mean,
Yeah,
I guess
you're
ready
right.
for the presentation.
Sure.
So,
Absolutely.
take it away.
Okay. All right. I'm Jordan Alina, Deputy Director of Community Development, and we are here to discuss these residential variances for 2806 Deerfield Lane. So you can see here on the context map, that small yellow dot is the location of the property, and that is in the R3 single-family residential district. And here are some of the bulk regulations that property within the R3 residential district have to adhere to. And a few of these apply to what we're discussing tonight, particularly the minimum side yard setback of 10 feet, as well as the maximum floor area ratio there of 0.35. And so we'll get into that a little bit more. So here's a little bit more context. Here's a shot of the front of the house, and then context here of the cul-de-sac. So this, along with some of those adjoining properties, do have sort of that wedge shape you would see on a cul-de-sac, where it's more narrow in front and wider in the back. And you can kind of see that to that discussion about the possibility of a detached garage, the topography of that corner and some drainage issues make that more difficult than simply a flat yard adding a detached garage. So here kind of can see the proposed additions here. So the existing garage with the second floor addition over top, and then the proposed third car addition here, and you can see from that side view how far set back it is. So it's not in line with the front line of the existing garage. And then here you can see kind of the aerial, and obviously this is a little bit smaller here on the presentation, but you can kind of see that 10-foot dotted line around there, which really shows the variance request. So there's 2 variance requests from that side yard setback. So first, for the addition over the garage. As the applicant mentioned, there had been an earlier plat at the time that the home was built that showed this outside of that 10-foot setback. A more recent survey showed that it was possibly within that 10-foot setback, and that amounts to an 8-inch variance for that second story addition. So staff believes that basically right there meets the definition of a hardship and is reasonable, and staff recommends approval for that variation. For the third car garage addition, you can see here, so that 10-foot line, you sort of would clip the corner there, and ultimately the closest that proposed third car addition would be 5 feet into that 10-foot setback. So that's the second setback variation requested for this proposed addition. In addition to that, this sort of lays out all three here, the bulk zoning regulations in the R3 district, depending on the size and square footage of the house and the square footage of the property, it's a fancy term that us planners use to kind of determine, how much square footage the house takes up versus the lot. And the maximum for a house of this size, the FAR, it would be 0.35. Fortunately, with these proposed additions, it would be just slightly over 1.1% to an FAR of 0.361. That's a very relatively minor request. So staff is not making a recommendation on those, leaving it up to the commission to discuss it and come to a final decision on that. But as was discussed before on the setback for the specifically for that third car garage, some information to keep in mind. If they were to build, a detached garage, keep in mind that that could be as close as 2.5 feet from the property line. So there are different setback rules for a detached garage versus an addition to the, to a third car attached to the house, which would need to normally stay within that, boundary of 10 feet from the property line.
Question, does the existing driveway also go in front of that garage, or do they also gonna have to lay additional driveway to get over to that garage?
Yeah, that would require additional driveway.
Okay, so that's part of the variance then too, correct?
There's no variance required for the driveway.
Okay,
in
I'm
that
just asking.
setback.
All right, thank you.
Questions? So, but for the cul-de-sac and the odd-shaped lot, if they wanted to do this in, let's say, a normal size lot, they wanted to build a second story and a third car garage, assuming it's not, 100 feet tall in the air or something crazy, but kind of as envisioned in the current plans, is it fair to say I know we're a bit of a hypothetical here, but is it fair to say that that no variances would be needed? Just by virtue of building those structures?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, it's certainly a hypothetical, but the particular layout of a wedge-shaped lot in a cul-de-sac certainly limits, you don't have right angles that you're dealing with. You're dealing with flared corners and, wider at the rear than the front. So presumably in a more traditionally shaped property, that is true.
Sure. I guess, question on the attached garage and the floor area ratio, staff, is that right? You're not making a recommendation on hardship, but you are on the second story addition? I guess I'm curious why the distinction. I don't necessarily see it. Is it a matter of degree? Like we're just talking 8 inches versus 5 feet?
I think mainly because of the discrepancy there on that plat from the original plat that showed it outside of that 10-foot and, a new plat that shows it just slightly over that 10-foot line. If that plat turns out to be correct, that's certainly a hardship that should they be required to put this addition, just move it 8 inches when the existing home is legal non-conforming. Glenn, do you have any additional, or Rob, additional thoughts to add to that?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, the existing condition of the house is, like survey misses happen. This is a little larger than what we'd be used to seeing, but it is relative to the burden on a neighbor or on the public. That would, I think, be a real hardship to the owner to have to adjust the second floor footprint or not build the second floor or what have you. The garage, you can make arguments both ways on that. I think some of the evidence that the petitioner provided in their packet's persuasive. I think another thing to consider too that the petitioner points out is, a detached garage could be located, about where this garage is, or even closer, right? An attached garage does have a further setback requirement. That's common. That's a common situation. That's not a flaw in how we wrote it. Often, it being connected means a bigger perception of bulk and so on. But, people can come to different conclusions on that. But we aren't recommending saying no to it either.
Sure. I mean, I frankly don't see the distinction, and I think it's clear the hardship's not that the dolls have too much stuff and they don't have enough storage. That's not the hardship, it's the lot they're on, right? And so I think it's all part of the same package and just matters of, it's basically the same issue as I see it. So I'm comfortable that there's enough of a hardship here. And, I actually live one street over on Grove Side, so I'm familiar with the neighborhood. Obviously, there are older houses in our neighborhood that have the second story. Not sure about I know there's 3-car garages, maybe a couple. I'm not sure there's detached ones, but I think it's largely in keeping with, other relief or other development that's been granted in the neighborhood, and certainly the fact that the one neighbor is in support of it, I think is helpful. So any other questions of staff? Okay. Great. Now, ma'am, it's your turn, members of the public, to come forward, ask questions. If you still have any, provide comments. Now's your chance. If you could please come forward, please state your name and spell your first and last name.
Okay, Mary Olson, Olson, 2804 Mill Creek, Rolling Meadows.
Please raise your right hand.
Pardon?
Raise your right hand. We're going to swear you in. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Please go ahead.
Okay. I'm an original owner, so I go back a long way. My husband, who's been dead for over 30 years, when we bought the house, it took about 2 years for it to be built, because the original, where we are and where the pond is in that particular subdivision, was all gravel, right? And one of the things, as I was looking through the documentation that my husband had, because he was very good, was the grading of the land. Kennedy had, in fact, I have that original piece of paper saying it was important for the grading of the land so that houses next to you would not flood. Now, and I have no problems at all with the 2-story thing above the garage. It's the garage itself, because when you come that close to a line and your next door neighbor and it starts raining, there's a possibility of that area flooding. And that would be my biggest concern. Also, because what's happening is that and I could be wrong, okay, it could set a precedent to say, hey, we could build a 3rd garage and go very close to the lot line or over what the allowance is, and I think that could cause problems. And I was there, and I'm old, so I tell stories, okay? I was there when they built on Quinton and Euclid, that subdivision, and the drainage system that went in flooded our area. We actually had water shooting up through the sewer system. So when I say, even though I don't live right next door to the changes or even directly across the street, it's part of the subdivision, and what happens to one house could also affect my house in the long run. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So staff, do you have any comment on the flooding issue potentially?
Yeah, what we would say is obviously this is, right now we're just talking about these variation requests. Should this project move forward to a building permit application process, we will ask for a grading plan that will ensure that, any water that enters or, originates from this property is not impacting neighbors and it's going to the right place. So, that's a separate process the city will be involved in to make sure that there's no drainage impacts, due to the construction of a garage or any other structure on this property.
And that would be a standard part of the process that you would require?
Correct. Yep. As part of the building permit process. Yep.
Does that make sense, ma'am? Did you hear that?
No, but I'll talk afterward, after the meeting's done.
Yeah, you're more than welcome to talk with staff and get more clarification or comfort, ask any other questions. They'll be glad to help you out.
I don't know if this is a proper time to say this.
Could
but
you
Please
come
step
up
to
to
the
the
mic.
mic, please? Thank you.
I do want to compliment the gentlemen that work for Rolling Meadows and do the maintenance all around with the roads we got. When our road was done last year, we had an update constantly. They were fantastic. You've got a great bunch of people working, and I want to thank you for that.
Thank you. That's nice to hear.
That was nice feedback.
And our roads just got done 2 weeks ago, so I would agree with that. Nice to have new roads, so. Thank you, ma'am, for coming and providing that testimony. Feel free to talk to staff afterward for anything further. Anybody else from the public here? Okay, can I have a motion then to close the public hearing in the matter?
I'll motion to close the public hearing for residential variances at 2806 Deerfield Lane. Petitioner Adon Dar.
A motion by Commissioner Gerken. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Modi. By voice vote, all in favor, please state yes.
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 All opposed, please state no. 5 yeses and 0 nos. The motion carries. Public hearing in the matter is now closed. On to the motion for recommendation to approve, which I believe we're ready to vote on. Unless there's any other questions or comments regarding it. Can I then have a motion?
Did you close the meeting?
Yes.
You did,
Just
okay.
did. Thank you. So can I have a motion for recommendation to approve the petition and the findings?
I'll go for it. Based upon the submitted petition and testimony presented, I move that the Rolling Meadows Planning and Zoning Commission make the findings of fact provided by the petitioner and recommend that City Council approve the requested variances as set forth in a Trans-Dare ordinance attached Exhibit 2 for the residential variance at 2806 Deerfield Lane.
Motion by Commissioner Gerken. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Furstein. Staff, could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Burchett,
Yes.
Commissioner Furstein,
Yes.
Commissioner Gerken,
Yes.
Commissioner Modi,
Yes.
Chair Buckingham.
I'm also a yes. The standards in the packet were very detailed and I thought persuasive, and I believe there's enough of a showing of a hardship here with little complaint from the public, so I'm also a yes. So with 5 yeses and 0 nos, the motion for recommendation to approve is granted. This will then be forwarded, ma'am, to City Council at their next meeting on August 26th to hear on the merits, at least for a first reading. This was just a recommendation tonight, so you're welcome to come back August 26th. Thank you. Good luck. On to matter number 3, which is a public hearing for a special use permit for a veterinary clinic at 3993 to 3995 West Algonquin Road. Petitioner is the Animal Hospital of Rolling Meadows. This is a special use permit which would authorize the expansion of an existing animal hospital into neighboring vacant storefront at the subject property. Staff, has proper notice been given and is the file in order?
Yes and yes.
Thank you. Can I have a motion then to open the public hearing in the matter and to enter the staff report into the record? How about somebody other than Mr. Gherkin?
Glenn does
To
it so
shake
well.
things
I'll make a recommendation.
One more time.
to the special use permit for veterinary clinic to enter the staff report and open the public hearing.
Motion by Commissioner Gerken. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Modi. By voice vote, all in favor, please state yes.
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 All opposed, please state no. 5 yeses and 0 noes. The motion carries and the public hearing in the matter is now open. Now call upon petitioner to come forward and present your request. So we're familiar with the packet. Now's your chance to provide a summary and any elaboration. So first of all, if you could, we're going to swear you in. If you could please state your name, spell your first and last name, and provide your address.
My name is Rana Hafiz, Ranahafeez. I'm a veterinarian at Animal Hospital of Rolling Meadows.
Great. At the subject property, you're the
Yes.
veterinarian and
Yes,
the
sir.
owner. Great. I remember you from
Yeah.
a year or two ago.
Mhm.
So could you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Please proceed.
We are thinking to expand the hospital because right now we are open, but we are dealing with some problems which we were not expecting. The problem is that if we have a contagious diseases like the dog with the parvo or kennel cough, we have to block that section, and the others we have practically no exam rooms left. And second thing, the surgery room we are using as a dental room and a surgery room combo. It's a small place. We have to take the surgery room separately because that you should not do the dentistry in the room where you are doing the bone surgeries. Because we were thinking because we were outside, we have a dental area, but that is not good enough. We are thinking to expand and make it up to the mark where we can do proper work and everything. Because the orthopedic area, there should be nothing else should be done. Otherwise, the cross-contamination, if the bone infection, for God's sake, happen, it's osteomyelitis, it will be a 1 year of antibiotics. And that's why we are trying to improve the inside hospital and everything. We are not putting any new equipment or anything, but it's more, we are putting 2 exam rooms. If we have for God's sake, the parvo or the kennel cough or something will come, we can isolate the other side, and in this way we don't need to use that one. And on the other side, we are trying to improve a little bit the laboratory section too. We have a lab machines, but we are right, it is in the middle, and we are getting the problem again and again. We have to call the company almost every week because it is a dust there in that area. It has to be in the separate area.
So is it fair to say the business is growing?
Business is definitely growing. It is a long-term investment, not a short-term, but it's not that growing, but I like to make the things up to the mark. In this way, we don't need to deal with it, for God's sake, because I'm a bone surgeon. My biggest fear, I don't want to be a donor for the infection.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think that makes good sense.
Yeah.
Anything else, sir?
That's all, sir.
Great. Any questions of Mr. Hafiz? I think it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah,
So-
sounds like from a safety standpoint.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
more the furthest.
That this is definitely something you should be able to do.
Agreed. So thank you.
Thank you guys.
Yes.
I really appreciate that.
Do you own the entire?
Yeah,
You
I
own the
own.
entire building.
Yes.
So the area that's not in use right now, what is
We are
in
thinking
there?
to rent out. Right now, we did not find anyone, but we have 2 or 3 renters already there, and maybe we will not right now, but maybe later on we will move something more and see. But right now, my biggest focus is the animal hospital. Again, during COVID, we were blooming, over committed. Right now, all animal hospitals are downhill. Again, to expand it is more anxiety, more investment, but only thing is to do the job proper. Because the biggest thing is that, being a surgeon, my biggest issue is that I don't have a good surgery room. I have I'm using the dental and the surgery the same room. That was the reason, the whole thing.
Makes sense.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you
Yep.
for your election.
Staff, anything to add?
Yeah, also I just want to introduce myself. I'm Annika Gerstam. I'm the intern here. So sorry I didn't say that for the
No.
last one.
We
So
remember
yeah,
you
we'll-
from last time.
Yes. But like you said, it seems like it's a pretty straightforward case, so I'll just give a little bit more background here. So like you remember, there was a special use granted in 2024, and so this is going to be an amendment to that special use for an existing special use permit to expand their operations at 3993 Algonquin Road. So you can see in the context area here, this is right off of Algonquin and 53. Their existing animal hospital is the parcel all the way closest to us, and that's 1,500 square feet, and they're proposing to expand next door. It's an additional 1,500 square feet of space. So this is zone C2, corridor commercial, and then it's surrounded by commercial to the east and west, and then directly to the south are the preserve at Woodfield, which is multifamily. So in C2, veterinary clinics are considered a special use due to the potential hazards, potential nuisance mitigation, which since the applicant has operated here, there have been no issues. They've been according to industry standards, so it should be safe and good to go for that. And then in terms of traffic and parking, so the entire complex, there's six tenants, six shop fronts, which there's a shared parking agreement for, I think it's actually 56 spaces that are provided on site. And according to our parking calculation requirements, only 41 are necessary, which includes the proposed use. So by those standards, it seems like parking is more than adequate. And all in all, staff recommends approval of the petition.
Thank you. Any questions of staff?
No, well done.
Yeah, I think we're good. Okay, anybody from the public here on this matter? Okay, can I then have a motion to close the public hearing in the matter?
I'll motion to close the public hearing for special use permit for veterinary clinic 3993 to 3995 West Algonquin Road.
Motion by Commissioner Gherkin. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Furstein. By voice vote, all in favor, please state yes.
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 All opposed, please state no. 5 yeses and 0 no's. The motion carries, and the public hearing in the matter is now closed. We have a motion for recommendation to approve the petition and the findings. Can I have a motion?
Based upon the submitted petition and testimony presented, I move that the Rolling Meadows Planning and Zoning Commission make the findings of fact by the petitioner attached to as Exhibit 2 and recommend that the City Council approve the special use permit set forth in the draft ordinance for the special use permit amendment for the veterinary clinic at 3995 and 3993 West Algonquin Road.
Motion by Commissioner Gherkin. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Burchert. Staff, could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Burchett,
Yes.
Commissioner Furstein,
Yes.
Commissioner Gherkin,
Yes.
Commissioner Murdy,
Yes.
Chair Buckingham.
Yes as well. I believe the standards have been met in the packet. So with 5 yeses and 0 no's, the motion for recommendation to approve is granted and will be forwarded to the City Council for first reading at their meeting on August 26th. Thank you, sir. On to matter number 4, which is a public hearing for a text amendment, petitioner being the City of Rolling Meadows. The proposed amendment would change the mandatory minimum off-street parking ratios to voluntary recommendations for various land uses. Has proper notice been given, and is the file in order?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is, and yes, it has.
Thank you, Mr. Savage. Can I have a motion to open the public hearing in the matter?
A motion to public hearing and enter the staff report for the text amendment. Petitioners, City of Rolling Meadows, a proposed change to the mandatory off-street parking ratios to voluntary recommendations.
Motion by Commissioner Gherkin. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Furstein. By voice vote, all in favor, please state yes.
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 All opposed, please state no. With 5 yeses and 0 nos, the motion carries and the public hearing in the matter is now open. I would now call upon the city to present its petition.
Certainly. So, minimum off-street parking ratio requirements are essentially the amount of parking spaces that we require of all land uses in the city. So we have 67 individual categories. They all have a number associated with them. So essentially, per square foot or per occupant of design capacity, each business or development is required to have a certain amount of parking. This is loosely informed by the Institute of Traffic Engineers ITE Parking Generation Manual, and then over time, through code iterations, you have kind of a tailoring just through past practices. Couple of examples here. Restaurants, we require 10 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet. Offices, 4 per 1,000, so on and so forth. The benefit of this is that you have a policy that is very even and simple to administer, it's objective, and it's quantitative. The city's adopted plans make several recommendations to look into the city's parking regulations. Essentially, large expanses of asphalt produce a lot of grey infrastructure. It can produce a lot of visual bulk. Environmental effects such as the heat island effect, which is shown here on the bottom right, where you see a 50-degree temperature differential between landscaped area and parking lot. So there are issues with impervious surfaces in terms of drainage, stormwater management, and it also impedes the city's ability to promote more pedestrian-oriented development. Similarly, the comprehensive plan asks us to address issues to do with land use patterns, making things more efficient, more green, more people-centered. So with regards to the ITE Parking Generation Manual, many of these models come from fairly limited surveys with quite variable results. They aren't necessarily designed to be recommendations. There are kind of guidelines. There are a North Star. And they've had quite an impact on municipal policy kind of across the country. You can see on the right here we have the survey for fast food restaurants, and there's very little relationship between floor space and amount of parking that's generated. So it is difficult to obtain really useful predictive quality data from many of these models. As you can see, that nonetheless, the average rate of parking generated within this sample is 10 for fast food restaurants, and Rolling Meadows has a requirement of 10 spaces per 1,000 square feet. We're kind of somewhere in the middle of neighboring communities. Schaumburg has some uses that are a little bit higher required spaces, but ultimately we're not unique in our requirements. Ultimately, land use changes and parking demand have seen fairly rapid and persistent changes in demand. We're looking at much more food delivery, grocery delivery, online shopping, a persistent reduction in office demand, changes in work types, work from home, digital, and ultimately it seems like no one hangs out at the mall anymore. So this has obviously lasting impacts for many of our larger developments. We have, oftentimes severely underutilized land in commercial areas. This is a fairly familiar site for many of the larger planned developments in town. Now, the impacts to smaller developments and small firms is a little more difficult to nail down. It's something you might not see as obviously as a large empty parking lot. Sometimes in these smaller strip centers, for instance, you'll see quite busy parking lots. But what we see on the policy side is that we have either a lot of businesses that are deterred by not meeting the required parking. So, we may not be seeing highest and best use of those retail shop fronts. And in other cases, it hurts the ability to expand. It may limit the ability to attract high value tenants, and so on. We also see quite a few variations coming through many times for these smaller developments as well. In the past 5 years, we've seen 10 variation requests, all of which have been approved, which represents about 294 parking spaces. So variations, as you know, can be quite an endeavour particularly for small businesses when they're kind of at their most fragile, at their most vulnerable. They may be constrained in terms of their finances, constrained in terms of their man time or staff time while they're setting up. So it comes at some opportunity cost to these tenants and developments. Notably, this does not include many of the planned developments we've seen. Pacifica, for instance, had significantly, I believe there's 190 or so parking spaces less than the required, and they were also passed through. You may remember the special use and parking variation for ATS, who came before you a few months ago to discuss their upcoming expansion. Within their variation application, they all but stated that, we like Rolling Meadows, but if we don't get this variation, we cannot see ourselves operating here, which would be a significant loss to the city. In terms of the immediate economic impacts of this, a single parking space up front is estimated to cost somewhere in the vicinity of around $4,000 per space. This doesn't include the ongoing maintenance and the auxiliary costs such as landscape islands and stormwater infrastructure and such. So for the variation, the parking variation that was granted to Rolling Meadows Park District for the park improvements there, that would have been an excess $295,000 in costs up front to build in the requisite parking. So, we're talking about fairly large orders of magnitude, which were then granted as essentially unnecessary through the variation process. So really there are significant hidden costs to requiring very large amounts of parking that may be excessive. It hurts our ability to attract and expand businesses. They can often be deterred by the variation process and can burden smaller businesses more significantly. And larger growing businesses may be disincentivized from expansion. The installation and maintenance costs up front, probably not so hidden to the development community, but on the policy side, it tends to be maybe thought of a little bit less. But the lifetime costs for a single parking space have been estimated to be upwards of $30,000 to $50,000. And as we stated, a single project can easily get up to $1 million in upfront costs. And then there's the opportunity, and it's just the notion that land is a very scarce resource, and it should be utilized efficiently and productively. And so underutilized land, it represents a lost investment in business and housing development and the associated revenue, and ultimately a sense of place. And so it limits this ability to do incremental development, outlot development, redevelopment, and expansion. So I was going to get Glenn to talk through more of the details with regards to the actual text amendment language and how this will be done from a policy angle.
Thank you. So you have a long draft ordinance there in your packet. I'll just say I'm not going through that page by page. We're happy to answer questions. Please don't feel like there's a silly question or a stupid question. What this ordinance does at its most basic is three things. I'll actually take number 2 first. We take that whole table Mr. Savage talked about, we cross out required, we put recommended. It's that simple. There's one parking requirement which remains, which is requiring that folks provide at least one parking space per dwelling. The market and what we expect is that many folks will continue to provide 2 parking spaces per dwelling, or pretty close to 2 per dwelling. That's normal. This doesn't change that. 1 parking space per dwelling. There's still a third of Rolling Meadows that has 1 car or less per household, over a third. When you think, where do we set the threshold? 1 makes a lot of sense. 0 is a very small percentage. It's like 3%, and those folks probably aren't not driving by choice. We don't have transit. We're still spread out. 1 space per dwelling is still going to be necessary. So we kind of pick the middle ground there. And then the last thing we're doing is just when this group considers new developments, you're still looking at parking. That doesn't change. We're putting in some guardrails. We're putting in some guidance for, okay, if there's not a hard number to hit, what's the number, right? We really want this to be predictable, and we want predictable outcomes. And so that framework says, you can meet the recommendations. They're still there. You can still use them. You can get a traffic engineer. The traffic engineer can tell us how much parking this will take based on context by taking those tables in that ITE book and applying them using professional knowledge. Or they can provide surveys of properties like theirs elsewhere. You might remember the Chipotle example. Very similar. They know how Chipotle works in 1,000 locations, and they're happy to tell you how they think it'll work here. You still have a lot of discretion in how you evaluate those, but again, trying to give some guidance to folks. A few more specific things I'll just call out from the ordinance without going through it line by line. Again, a lot changes just because there's a lot of references to required parking, and many of those change. The first non-conforming parking areas we won't talk about here. Just know that we're talking about in your next agenda item about landscaping. There's a bit of overlap just in if you grind down a parking lot and partially overlay it, partially rebuild it, when do some of these things kick in? You'll see a reference in there, but we're really talking about it in this next item. The next one, there's kind of a new section in there, which is utilization of parking. This is pulling together a lot of different threads in the code about how parking is supposed to be used. For example, we don't want semi-trucks being parked in places that have nothing to do with where the semi-truck's parking. We want to have we cross-reference where RVs are supposed to be parked and our rules about that in residential, and we cross-reference not having junk cars, being stored in public view. New language, but really the requirements that exist today, we're trying to clean that up here as we're working through this. Shared parking. Our definition of shared parking is written assuming that people are sharing parking to meet the parking requirements, which aren't requirements anymore. So this is retooled a bit just to talk about the permissive case, if you would, where people are choosing to share parking. That's another example where we don't actually necessarily want to incent that in some cases, right? There's a situation in Palatine right now where a church has bought a residential house and is planning to turn that house into a parking lot. That's not something we necessarily want to happen without a special use permit or without review. This establishes some guidelines about, hey, we want parking really on the same lot. We don't want people buying and holding land and using it as parking in the meantime, right? But where we are sharing parking, there's some guidelines about distance and design and so on. The last interesting little wrinkle that came out of our drafting was visitor parking. So there's some provisions kind of unique to the city for visitor parking. One talks about just setting aside so many spaces for commercial. Sure, if you're building parking, a lot of our rules still apply as a ratio. If you have 100 spaces, you should have 5 spaces for visitors. That's fine. In residential, most communities that we surveyed, I think we surveyed 12 or 13 near us, don't have a visitor parking requirement at all. But we know that there's some friction in multifamily and more dense townhome development where, the market has an incentive to give people, residents somewhere to park, but not necessarily visitors. The city had a really low ratio. It's like 1 visitor for every 6 parking spaces. So 3 houses have 1 visitor space. That makes a lot of visitor spaces if that was used. We only found 2 out of that set that had a rule like this. One was 1 to 10, the other was 1 to 20. In this draft, this keeps it at 1 to 20 for larger developments. We think you can just get rid of it too if you wanted to, but 1 to 20 is not going to hurt anyone. That still provides, in those larger developments, a little bit of breathing room for parking that's not just relying on a street. By the time you're getting into 5 of those spaces, you have 100 dwelling units, right? So it's a very, very small requirement. With that said, again, don't want those details to cloud out that this is a big change. It's an important change, but conceptually it's very simple. Cross out required, put in recommended, and we think it would bear a lot of benefit to the city.
We did this a couple of meetings ago in another section, didn't we? We changed what it should be to recommended parking, didn't we?
We brought this to you as a discussion item at your last meeting. You didn't take any action. So this is the very same concept.
Oh, this is the same concept.
Yeah.
Now we're actually implementing it. Gotcha.
Bingo. Yeah, we so we shared this with the Plan Commission. We shared this with I should say the Planning and Zoning Commission. Forgive me. We shared this information with the City Council as well. Some of that FAQ comes from the different things we heard from these groups.
Gotcha.
And then our environmental group, kind of has not heard this discussion, but they originated this idea in their
And
their
also
planning
this
documents.
includes at least 1 handicap place at any point in time, correct? Except in residential, but in businesses, correct?
Yeah, so all of those parking rules that are left really scale with the amount of parking you're providing, right? So
Right.
this doesn't get you out of ADA. If you're building 10 parking spaces, you'll have to provide, I think it's 1 ADA stall. So
Okay.
same
I
federal
just want to
rules.
make sure that that's still built into this whole program.
Yep.
Okay, that's all the question I had.
Questions? And so for the Kirchhoff development, the new zoning there, on the parking, I can't remember, is there a similar mechanic where it's recommended, or is it just totally silent even on that?
It is, the way it was drafted, just to make it less confusing, it's silent on that.
Okay.
It just says the only rule is 1 per dwelling. We actually
Right.
take that language out here, so those recommendations would extend to the Kirchhoff Road corridor, but again, they're recommendations.
Say that part again, so
So that table of recommendations, right now,
would
if you read it
apply.
very narrowly, it doesn't apply in the town center district at all.
Hmm.
Those recommendations would apply if you adopt this. I wouldn't really consider that a change in policy.
Right, okay. So with this simple change from requirement to recommend, I mean, we still have the numbers and the ratios in the table. We're not changing those. I mean, are those really meaningful, or is that just a number? Like, is that really recommended by the city now, given everything you've shown about underutilization and all that? Was there any thought given to actually revising those still recommended numbers down?
Sure. I'd answer that in a couple ways. So the second part of your question is easier. We did consider it. I would say, a couple things. One, just communities like us have not gotten this right. We continue to not get this right. I am modest in being hesitant to say that I don't know that we can get it right either without just being arbitrary and just going, let's do a haircut of 10 or 25 or 50%. It's kind of a system that has evolved out because people expect it, and it's hard to justify a lot when you look at how much variation there is from community to community, site to site. Again, this isn't, but part of the comfort of making this recommendation is just that, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this as a bit of a joke, but people don't trust developers, and that's fine. And we probably shouldn't, and that's why we have zoning rules to a point, right? We should trust people to act in their self-interest. It's in a property owner and developer's interest to build enough parking for their use. It doesn't serve anybody to build less parking than that. In many cases, for properties that are exposed to the market, they won't be able to sell it to the next guy if there's not enough parking there. This is in no way saying we should get rid of parking. It's saying that markets have evolved to the point they can figure this out, as compared to the 40s, the 50s, when we're building out the interstate system, and we haven't figured it out yet. That's all we're trying to get at with this.
So the upshot then is, it didn't make much sense in your mind to try to adjust the numbers, since those are largely going to be arbitrary potentially, and they're still just recommendations, and so let's not go through the brain damage of doing that when probably wouldn't amount to anything.
In so many words,
Maybe.
yes. I think that book that Mr. Savage cited is a valuable resource for engineers to use, and not necessarily to make law.
Sure.
The 12th edition is being released in August, or this next week, of that book. So.
I think that's trip generation, not parking, but yes.
Oh, you're right. That's 6th edition. Sorry.
Yeah. I will say the charts you saw in here are from older editions. The 6th edition is like a subscription product the city doesn't subscribe to, but it's the same theory. It's a lot of surveys put together. It's sort of useful. Trip generation is a bit more helpful in some cases, so that those numbers tend to hold up pretty well, just because it's different settings. There's still a bit of a spread, urban to suburban, but.
And as far as parking goes, it's diminishing significantly after the pandemic. I see it every day. You go past these huge parking lots and you maybe see 20 cars, 30 cars. Because people are using either transportation or they're working from home. It's significantly different everywhere you go.
Shared spaces,
Yeah.
work
Take-
co-ops.
Yeah, take example, the Arlington Park parking lot. That used to hold 900 cars a day before the pandemic. You're lucky if you get 50 there a day.
Yeah, I think the rationale makes sense, and I'm all for leaving it up to free market to reach an agreement. But that raises the question, so if an applicant comes in and says, okay, here's what we want to do on a new development, and we think, X number of spaces is sufficient, will staff have a view on that? And what happens if you guys think it's way too low? Will there be some attempts to, work that through with the applicant? And could that not even reach us if you all feel this is just not viable or not being realistic? Or would you then throw that over to us? Any thoughts there?
And does that take away some of your authority because it's no longer required, but it's recommended? I mean, that gives you wiggle room, but that also gives a developer, wiggle room, right?
Yeah, so taking those in order, like we talked about, you still look at the the adequacy of parking as part of your standards, right? We put in there some language saying, hey, our goal is to let markets figure this out. So you've got a lot of wiggle room, but still says, hey, we're going to look at the recommendations. If you bring a traffic study, we'll look at the traffic study. It gives you a few different ways to make the argument. We'll look at that as staff. I think within that framework, at least this set of folks, I think we're inclined to let someone go pretty far in saying that this will be the right amount. And that's what I would expect, not to get on a tangent, but I wouldn't expect big changes in the suburbs like us. I would expect people will probably, at least for this first set of steps, they'll kind of cheat at the margins, right? But they'll have a lot more flexibility, Commissioner Furstein, to your line of questioning, to do that cheating, right? Strictly speaking, and this is a variation can mean very many things, but the standard should be hardship, right? And in many cases, it's hardship and not having parking. It can be easy and be hard, but it's supposed to be a pretty high standard. When this group considers just is something adequate or not, have they met the standards? You do have a lot more flexibility in how you look at that and how you evaluate it, and thinking things through in a broader way. I don't think it'll limit us at all. If folks disagree with us, they can always they can appeal our decisions. They always can have their day in court, so to speak, when they come to you with a hearing. I mean, you've heard there have been a very small number of occasions that we have to hash these things out at a meeting, as you recall, and people always have that choice. I mean, we don't stifle them from that, but people usually recognize it's easier to work with us, and we try to bring you good products at these by the time it gets to this setting.
Question for you. They come in with a number, say, we want 35 parking spaces for a business. And all of a sudden the business just rockets off and they need more. Would they then have the opportunity to add more if they have the land?
Yes. So that's a technique used elsewhere in the country is actually they don't cross it out and put recommended. They cross it out and put maximum. For a lot of reasons, we don't think that's a great approach either. At least.
But I mean, if we put down recommended and they still need it, they would have to come back for an approval, correct?
Depends how you structure it. Yes. I mean, in many cases, I think they could build that additional parking without coming back. But
Okay.
There are some where they may have to.
So if we just recommend it as this, then you could work it out with them.
Yeah.
Okay. So I just thought I'd ask that question because some businesses all of a sudden just take off.
Right. But if this passes, we're no longer going to be in the business of approving variances for parking in these cases, right? Is that fair?
That's correct. Again, you'll keep talking about it. The
As
only
it relates
case
to the overall development and how that
Yeah.
may impact viability or the other standards, but we're never going to be, we shouldn't be deciding a variance for parking, strictly speaking.
Yes.
Okay.
There's one narrow case,
Yep.
which is visitor parking.
Yeah.
I don't foresee that. The opportunity to ask for a residential, a variation to go under one per isn't even there.
Okay. And then the legal nonconforming or the grandfathering, did you say we're going to cover kind of the standards for that in the second presentation because they're going to be the same? Is that?
Yeah,
Hear
so
that
we
right?
we start touching that section here again because we're trying to clean up
Yeah.
a few just kind of goofy sections of how the code turned out when it was revised. Here we chop off a lot of language to make it simpler, and the next item we'll actually talk about just taking that sentence out entirely. So it's just a goofy. It's a section that both of these very different topics happen to touch, and we just wanted to deal with it in one or the other.
But you'll speak to that in the next presentation.
Yes.
Okay.
At least in this world, these changes don't, the only fewer parking lots are non-conforming because there's no requirements to which they would not conform anymore.
Right.
And
Right.
that's why we had to tinker with it a little
Got it.
bit here.
Okay. Any other questions? Yeah, I think we're good, and thanks to staff for the detailed presentation. I think it was very helpful in the thoughtful drafting of the new ordinance. Looked like that took some time.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, I bet. Okay, anybody from the public here wishes to comment or provide testimony? Nope. Can I then have a motion to close the public hearing in this matter?
A motion to close the public hearing for the text amendment petitioner of City of Rolling Meadows for the change in mandatory minimum off-street parking ratios to voluntary recommendations.
Motion by Commissioner Gherkin. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Burchert. By voice vote, all in favor, please state yes.
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 All opposed, please state no. With 5 yeses and 0 noes, the motion carries and the public hearing in the matter is now closed. Can I have a motion for recommendation to approve the petition and the findings?
Based upon the submitted petition and testimony presented, I move that the City of Rolling Meadows Planning and Zoning Commission make the findings of fact by the petitioner and recommend the City Council approve the text amendment as set forth in the draft ordinance for the text amendment for mandatory minimum off-street parking ratios to voluntary recommendations for various land and uses.
Motion by Commissioner Gerken. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Modi. Staff, could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Burchett,
Yes.
Commissioner Fresting,
Yes.
Commissioner Gerken,
Yes.
Commissioner Modi,
Yes.
Chair Buckingham.
Yes, I believe the standards have been met in this case. So with 5 yeses and 0 noes, the motion carries and the recommendation to approve the text amendment is approved and will be forwarded to City Council for next reading on August 26th. That concludes matter 4 and on to the 5th and final matter, which is a public hearing for a text amendment by petitioner, City of Rolling Meadows. The proposed amendment would consolidate and update the city's landscape and screening standards, including provisions to encourage the use of native plant species and clarify parking lot requirements. Staff, has proper notice been given and is the file in order?
Yes and yes.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to open the public hearing in this matter?
A motion to open the public hearing, text amendment, city petitioner, City of Rolling Meadows, for the text amendment to landscaping regulations.
Motion by Commissioner Gerken. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Burchard. By voice vote, all in favor, please state yes.
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 All opposed, please state no. With 5 yeses and 0 noes, the motion carries and the public hearing in the matter is now open. Staff, time for your report.
Certainly. So this will just be kind of a bit of background on our landscaping regulations and kind of why we have them. Glenn's going to follow up with the policy details at the end of the presentation as well. So really the purpose of having these regulations is to ensure high environmental performance and aesthetically pleasing landscaping in public and commercial open spaces. Now, obviously this is going to be most noticeable in parkways, parking lots, commercial building, and lot perimeters. And really it's intended to balance the function and the form of public and open space, and open space in commercial lots as well. So really at the heart of it, this is just going to be mostly a code cleanup. There have been, in administering our existing landscaping regulations, there's been kind of a couple of hiccups along the way where we have had some interpretive differences with developers, occasionally with each other, where the regulations have not been as clear as they could be, and in some cases have been outright contradictory. So we want to remove some of these contradictory and ambiguous clauses within the code. We've added some informational graphics just to aid in making it legible and easy to interpret, more enforceable. But ultimately, it maintains most of the general approach of the existing language. And at the end of it, it's supposed to be, fair, consistently applicable, and in this case, it also hopefully provides a little less requirement for small lots and small developments. So, in terms of the slightly upgraded, I guess, restrictions, regulations in this text amendment, it does create some native species and species diversity requirements to try and improve biodiversity and plant resilience on lots. It modifies some requirements to increase canopy and landscaped areas in some applications, and increases planting requirement at the perimeter, so increasing that live ground coverage percentage. Obviously, there's a bit of background here with the comprehensive plan and sustainability plan. Both plans refer to improving landscape regulations and the city's role in helping to administer and promote healthy vegetation, healthy landscaping. Most of these do refer to public space and residential spaces, but we potentially have higher impact and equal kind of fingerprint in the commercial kind of spaces. So in terms of why we have these, you can see here is what a lot can look like without really any requirement, and unlike the right amount of parking, markets may not give you the right amount of landscaping. So on the right, you'll see the proposed site plan for this, which would essentially meet the new code requirements. Significantly more of those interfering landscaping barriers to help with drainage and breaking up that sheet drainage and infiltration, and then significantly more planting and canopy around the sides. Similarly, on the north, we have, in the picture on the upper of this frame, we have an existing lot in rolling meadows, generally sparse vegetation. And over time, we really want to see more maturity in canopy growth. You end up with cooler, greener conditions for commercial development. I like this image. You can tell I used it in the last presentation as well, but I think it's relevant here. Obviously, the mitigating heat island effect and drainage issues in public lots is very important for the city's sustainability goals. And Glenn's going to walk you through some of the actual policy details here again.
Sure. So again, there's no dumb questions, so please ask them. A bit of an overview of how we took these concepts and put them into practice. So a lot of the difficulty you heard Mr. Savage describe is we had one set of parking lot landscaping standards and we had one set of screening and landscaping standards applicable to parking lots. If that sounds redundant, we agree with you. So we chopped off that first half entirely. We put them all into the second half. And in doing so, we managed to get rid of a lot of redundancy and, quite honestly, a lot of things written twice in slightly different ways that caused us a lot of trouble. There's some new aspirational statements, if you would. Again, not to say that these aren't important, but they're just try to capture your meaning, and they'll be something you might think about when you look at these in the future. So that's, we want landscaping to mitigate incompatibilities between adjacent land uses. We want to create visual buffering, improve aesthetic appeal, lessen the impact of development on the environment. We want to help manage stormwater, which is an environmental issue and a property damage issue and everything else. When we look at when this landscaping has to be provided, we'll be talking about that existing non-conforming issue in the next slide as well. But one of the additions we're proposing here is just if a property is vacant for over a year or longer, when they would get a new business license, when they would go back into occupy, they'd have to come back up to meet this standard. There's some other language in there that gives us the ability to relax those standards for redevelopment, to recognize just practically that, it may not make a whole lot of sense to make that person put in landscape islands. But oftentimes after a year, these sites have fallen into disrepair. The existing landscaping probably is not in good shape. Part of rehabbing a building, you hope, is that people would plant landscaping in these buffer yards and so on. But we have seen a bit of folks trying to reoccupy these buildings and put in the least amount possible. We don't think that's fair to neighborhoods. Many codes recognize that after so long of not using a use, that you start to lose some of the benefits of being grandfathered in, and we think this is consistent with that. As Mr. Savage talked about, species requirements, these are binding requirements, these first two. The first is that 80% of these plantings should be native. There's a lot of lists of what's native to Northern Illinois we'd look to. We weren't too specific here, but we could be. There's a diversity requirement. We want no more than 15% of a single species. That's partially for, what's the word I'm looking for here? Resilience issues, disease resilience, drought and so on. But also we just want slightly more interesting landscapes than that. In an unnamed development I'll tell you about in the last year, they were happy to meet the city's landscape requirements, and they proposed to do it with over 60 of the exact same species of bush. We can be a little bit more creative than that. This will help us to get to those outcomes. There are some suggestions in there, again, about specific native trees from the Morton Arboretum. And kind of interesting if you want to read about it on your own, some work on native oaks that used to be in our region. And these are suggestions. They're not binding. Especially in landscape, I would say people have a good track record of taking our suggestions. A bush costs as much as another bush at the end of the day, and people would love to make us happy for free. Parking lot landscaping, again, a lot of this hovers around parking lots. Some of these other changes are more general, but these are particular to parking lots. We take a lot of requirements in that table in your memo, we boil them down. Parking lot islands were a bit more prescriptive about where they go, and then we require them a bit more often. Instead of having one island per 20 spaces, we say you can have one island per 15. For perimeter planting, we think we just make that rule a lot cleaner. There's some illustrations here on the right included with the code now. I'll give credit to our intern, Annika Gerstung, for drawing these. We love illustrations in zoning. Makes complex language a lot easier to follow along with. But again, trying to simplify these perimeter requirements, and also instead of just saying, hey, plant trees somewhere, trying to get people to plant trees in that perimeter, which helps to break up that interface between a property and the right-of-way a lot better. One of the aesthetically ugliest things, right, is concrete curb concrete, just big expanses. And so trying to break that up as much as we can aesthetically, we think is a positive. And then finally, there's a couple gross planting requirements. We did some examples. These don't come into play very often. Very often, the other requirements mean you have to meet these. But there are a few kind of edge cases where you might have not very much landscaped area versus parking area, not very many trees versus parking area. And so these would force you to put in just a little bit more in those edge cases, somewhere in the vicinity of the parking lot or on the property. Just kind of a safeguard from those edge cases. The decision point we'd like to present to you tonight is, again, thinking about nonconformities. So we have all these parking lots. With no offense to any particular parking lot owner, we have a lot of ugly parking lots. And so what is the strategy for making those beautiful parking lots? A lot of codes just say you've got the facility, you can keep running it for its useful life. You might have to bring it up never. You might have to bring it up when you do full depth reconstruction. Full depth is just very rare for a private property owner if they can help it. They love to just mill and overlay long as they can. In Rolling Meadows, there was a requirement put in with the last zoning code a few years ago saying when you do mill and overlay, so for folks not in the asphalt business, you take off a few inches, you put on a few inches. Unlike me at Christmas time. No, nothing. All right. The other way around. Good point.
You got some laughs.
Thank you. Well, I had to really let it hang out there, which is part of the comedic effect.
All in the timing.
Yeah. So, that is work that is done by an asphalt contractor. It doesn't take any plans. They count up some square feet. They order a truck. They mill it off. They put it on. One of the city's goals in trying to beautify these parking lots faster, if you would, was, when you do that, you need to provide some of this landscaping, right? You're tearing up half the asphalt as it is, put in the curb, put in the landscape island, excavate out the depth of what's left of the base, get to the dirt, and fix this as you go. That turns pretty simple projects into pretty complicated projects. Now you're talking about engineering, now you're talking about design, now you're talking about this area, even though you're making it green, MWRD still says that is disturbance, so that can push you towards, even though you're shedding less water into the stormwater system, that can push you towards building more stormwater facilities. So it's been a big pain point, and the couple times it's come up. Taking it out means that the pace of change here will be a lot slower. So there's not a great answer here, but that's something we would like you folks to weigh in on. But that's the only hard question. So happy to, we hope you will discuss this point, and we're happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you. So any questions?
Is this similar to other villages or cities around us? So they have these ordinances where, you know, they want, don't get me wrong, I like this. You know, I mean, I'd like to see more beautiful parking lots. A lot of them are, you know, they're very barren, but, you know, they're, like you said, you know, I mean, there does come some expense to it. I don't know. So is this similar to other villages and cities around us, requirements?
Yeah, we did not do a deep survey on this. In my experience, we happened to be next to, I'll give credit where it's due here, to a few folks. Schaumburg, as you can see from the pictures, is really turned up on this stuff. They have good regulations, and they administer them very effectively. For a few reasons, we're not recommending going that far. One of which being, you know, Schaumburg's sustainability planner really has a pretty good depth of experience in landscape architecture, and that's not a talent we have here. We've tried to get it by consulting, and we haven't found the right means to be able to get that consistently in a time-focused way, knowing the speed of turnaround on the rest of our plan reviews. Generally speaking, on the topic of landscaping, I would say the city is at a medium or a medium-low position. There are plenty of towns that just don't require it and get seas of asphalt. Of the towns that do requirement, I would say we're just subjectively, anecdotally, we're, again, kind of medium to medium-low for that. Certainly the northwest suburbs, especially those that are less industrial, tend to have these requirements. You know, we're not proposing to uplift them too much. These particular standards where we've focused in on is really a very small subset of the standards in Glenview. That's really just a drafting preference. They happen to be early to this particular space we're talking about, and their rules, I think, are a little less complicated. As far as this specific topic that's up on the screen, when do you have to upgrade a parking lot? I'm not familiar with anyone that by code does it the same way we do as far as that mill and overlay, grind and overlay process. In the codes I'm familiar with, it's you build a new parking lot. Again, we didn't survey that. That's something we could bring back if you would like.
So
I think your idea of then when they mill the parking lot to put down a new surface, I think it's a good idea to start the conversations with them before they do it about putting it in and come to an agreement as to how that works.
Part of the trick here, and this is, we can certainly, if we'd like to keep the existing policy, we can certainly do that and try to keep applying ourselves to how to implement it better. Because it is so routine,
Right.
by the time we find out about this, there's a contract signed,
Right.
someone's coming to get a permit because the truck's showing up the next day.
Right. Understood.
It's a sticky place to try to wade into.
Right.
And when they do this particular scope of work, they're not going to have to touch that parking lot again for 10 plus years.
Right.
If they're doing it right.
Right.
We discussed this at a prior meeting, and did we not make decisions about when we're going to require, about how much they're taking off, or did we not make a decision on
Yeah, I
this? 'Cause
kinda recall
that
something about that.
we
It was
did
for,
discuss this.
we're thinking that was for specific to retrofitting an EV chargers. So we went to a similar standard to what we're talking about here, which is just when you're building a new parking area.
Gotcha.
So different than this, but same concept.
So this would only be required for new parking lot, not existing ones?
If you were to take this section out, it would be required for development, which is new parking lots. It's also new buildings or new additions.
So
That would work in tandem with, there's another rule that says, or, that's proposed in here that says, when we have redevelopment, we can adjust those standards to just basically to make sense with the plan that you're working with.
So then the existing parking lots, we would never, unless they move out and it's dead, undeveloped for a year, would never get redone with planting then, correct?
Could be a very long time.
Could we kind of talk to the people who are owners of that thing, if they would be amenable to putting in some landscaping?
We could try.
Could we do that? And maybe not, since we can't modify the milling, I think it's a good idea going forward that the landscaping is, but I would think we would want to talk to the owners of the large parking lots to see if we can get some additional landscaping someplace. As a conversation.
We could certainly try. There's one such conversation we're getting ready to start right now, just on one of our more visible corridors. Scaling that, I wouldn't even be able to guess how many parking lots in this situation we have in the city. We haven't counted those off. There's going to be a bunch, but we can send letters. We can do outreach. We can kind of reach into our toolbox there and see if we get any bites.
That would be great.
So just as an example, we've got the new, the quick trip that's coming in over on Algonquin, right?
Yes.
There's an existing parking lot there, but they are going to have to redo that. Is that going to be considered new? Is this going to be a requirement of them?
So on the yes and no. So on the east half of the lot, their lot, that's all new. Their plans, their landscape plan met the standards in place right now. That plan's already approved. They'll build it. That is slightly different from what you're talking about tonight. On the west side of the lot, since this group heard it, and you remember we said this was a possibility, the liquor store owners have bought that western half to keep their liquor store and to keep operating the rest of that little strip mall. We're working with them on the work that they'll have to put into the site now, and we've communicated to them that meeting the landscape requirements is part of that, existing or not, based on what this group approved. We'll give them the choice, just from timing wise. We'll give them the choice of the old rules or the new rules. I don't know which one they'll take. Again, they'll have to build like one extra island under the new ones probably, so they may proceed under the old ones, but it's a pretty minimal difference in that case.
So beyond the liquor store, does that mean the dentist and the other store is going to stay?
I'm trying to remember where the dentist is. I think that's in the next
dentist is
shop.
right next to the liquor store. I mean, it's literally attached to it.
I don't know if
Something is.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll stay a dentist, but yeah, I think either 2 or 3 tenant spaces, depending on where the structural wall is,
Gotcha.
are expected to stay.
Okay.
So they're demoing out to basically the next structural wall after the property
Does that mean they have
line.
to get their own power and stuff like that? Because I know that was part of the conversation too.
Yeah, so a lot of those utilities are coming in through the west half of the building, which is good. They are coordinating that work. Part of, not that I think it'll matter, but part of that transaction was Quick Trip made sure that they could proceed,
Right.
even if their counterparts weren't going fast
Because
enough.
I know that was part of the conversation as to what if part of it stays, what's going to happen to all the utilities that run through the other buildings?
Yeah, haven't really touched the gas. I think the electric service comes in at the right spot. They're in plan review with us right now to move around the water main
Got it.
for that purpose. And then separately, Quick Trip is preparing to take out their part of the water main. Not to get too far afield on that one, but
Right. Well, I know, and that, just out of curiosity, when is that going to start? Because I know they said they had to wait for the tenants to get out of there, and I think they said a couple years before they could even start.
they're looking for a few months at the time. It should be, I mean, their site plans, their building plans, their demo plans, they're all in, and there are a couple revisions in at this point. They probably would have started except for some of this coordination work.
Gotcha.
Especially, they've just had to do a whole structural analysis to make sure they pick the right wall to knock down. I think it's a little bit of what's slowing them down.
I
So,
certainly hope so.
harder to figure out than you think on a building of that age.
I'm sure it is.
Turns out it used to be called, again, I should stop the tangent after this. It used to be called Meadows Trace once upon a time, and we didn't know that until we went fishing. It's always been called something else in our files, so we only found the original blueprints for the thing a couple weeks ago.
Wow. And that's probably back to the 50s sometime, I'm guessing?
Thereabouts.
Wow. So, back to the issue here on the parking lot. If somebody was just gonna do a grind and overlay, would they have to come in for some type of permit or approval? I guess the question is if we approve this as written, how would they know, oh wait, we're gonna have to landscape too?
It probably sounds a lot like that, Mr. Chairman. Oh wait, we're gonna have to landscape too, is what I meant. Yeah. So as I said to an earlier comment, we can try to, one way or another, we can try to make people more aware of this. So far, this is relatively simple work, but for this requirement, we get a permit application very close to when the work's going to take place. And again, by the time we get an application, typically the contract's signed and
That's what you were
going.
talking about. So,
Yeah.
but there is an application or a permit that's required, it just comes at the end,
Yes,
and there may not be time for them to adjust
that's correct.
without blowing their timing. Okay. I mean, this seems like the meat of the whole thing that we're doing here. I mean, a lot of what this is it would relate to parking lots. And so how aggressive do we want to be in doing what we can to ensure these changes get rolled in over time sooner rather than later? I mean, it sounds like if we don't draft it this way, a lot of this new effort with this piece of the ordinance could be, relatively toothless or have little impact.
Slow would be the word I would use.
Okay.
It would have impact only on new development,
Right,
not on
which-
existing.
Right, which how often do those come around? So, I mean, I'm comfortable with it as written. I think it's, all this stuff's a balance between trying to achieve the objective and put this in place and have it take effect versus the cost.
Right.
So, I mean, I think this is reasonable. We struck that balance before in that other case with the
Right.
EVs. So, any other thoughts from commissioners on this point? You guys comfortable with
I am.
as written?
I would prefer to fix the old ones, but if we can't do it, we can't do it. Unless it's inactive for a year and then somebody comes
Right.
in, then, which could be a possibility. I mean, with the pandemic, there's a lot of
Yep.
empty spaces around here that will probably eventually come back after a while. At that point in time, then we could say, hey, you've got to put in landscaping. Could we do something like that, like you did with the other one?
That's in there as drafted. Yeah.
That is in there as drafted. Okay, all right.
And this would apply to all the zoning districts?
Yeah, this is uniform to all off-street parking areas, which is basically everything except, 1 and 2 family dwellings, I believe.
So in particular, it would apply to the new Kirchhoff district?
To the extent that folks are building parking in there,
Sure.
yes.
Right. What else was I gonna ask? Okay. Okay. Any other questions?
I think my only concern is, obviously, when anybody is doing any sort of, parking lot, anything, it could be a budgetary concern, That's just my only concern for someone who is, you know, I mean, they're trying to be fiscally responsible, you know, and get all of it, everything together, and then all of a sudden, we have to add this in, this, you know, extra money. That's my only concern, because that can be a hitch, you know, for some companies, some entities, or whatever. That's my only concern about it, but like I said, don't get me wrong, I like it. I would like to see more beautifying and, you know, more vegetation in parking lots.
And
So,
I think that if that comes a concern, I think staff could work with them to kind of work that through, correct?
You know, to a point.
To a point.
to a point,
Correct.
it's either you.
But on that, is there any ability, like if somebody comes in and to ask for a variance or a waiver due to hardship, not necessarily with all this, but just kind of around the margins and maybe make exceptions in certain applications of this? Would that
Yeah.
be a possibility?
Yeah, and that there's a bit of that in there. So I've got page 7 if you want to follow along in your draft. You don't have to, but there's the landscape code is a bit different from other sections in that we don't have a pathway for variation. We think that would make you guys a lot of variations. That would be probably a questionable value. But there are 2 ways for us basically to administratively vary it, right? One is alternative materials. You know, the materials you called for aren't available. You have to substitute something else. There's existing stuff. Why would you rip that out to put something else in? That exists, and that's still here, and we keep doing that. The second is this idea of just varying it for redevelopment. We're starting from a not blank canvas. We try to modify the rules to fit the scope of the work that's coming through in these redevelopment cases. This is actually a narrower version of the rule that's in there, which said that we could reduce that for things like business visibility. You know, I mean, I certainly want to make sure businesses are visible. I don't think these rules applied right would, you know, create those kind of hazards. It's really pretty narrow just to, you know, trying to tailor the scope of the burden to the scope of the work that people are doing. So that is in there.
I mean, that's helpful, I think, to have those tools if needed. But on that, just looking at the redevelopment section, I mean, that's kind of vague. It leaves a lot of
pretty vague.
discretion with you all, which may be a good thing.
Yeah, I think
Right.
that is a good thing.
To
I'm
read
not
the
really sure what it says. I mean, it just kind of says you guys could disregard or work around many of these requirements just to kind of fit the situation.
So the existing standard, which may not have it right either, right, says where it's been determined by the zoning administrator that site constraints related to site size, impacts from adjacent properties, visibility required for businesses, or safe operations exist that may limit the ability of a particular site to conform. The zoning administrator may evaluate the proposal and make a determination for alternative compliance. So we've taken really a whole lot more examples, and we've kind of shrunk it down into one, which is you're redeveloping a site. You know, it may not make sense to impose all of those requirements if you're not doing that much work, and it gives us the ability upon showing, you know, there's that language at the very top, which is a unique circumstance, particular hardship, and it lets us dial that backwards and forwards, just knowing that these are many little small details throughout a site, and that's not as clean as just one setback line or one bulk requirement, to use a different example.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I'm comfortable with this. You all are.
I am.
Yeah.
Great. Any other questions?
Nope.
Great. Okay. Anybody from the public here wish to comment?
You get the prize for hanging with us all night.
Yeah. Okay. Hearing none, then we can go ahead and move to close the public hearing. Can I have a motion to close the public hearing in the matter?
A motion to close the public hearing for the text amendment, City of Rolling Meadows petitioner that would, for the landscaping, text amendment to the landscaping regulations.
Motion by Commissioner Gherkin. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Modi. By voice vote, all in favor, please state yes.
Yes.
Yes. All opposed, please state no. 5 yeses and 0 nos. The motion carries and the public hearing and the matter is now closed. Can I have a motion for recommendation to approve the petition and the findings?
Based upon the submitted petition and testimony presented, I move that the City of Rolling Meadows Planning and Zoning Commission make the findings of fact provided by the petitioner and recommend that the City Council approve the text amendment as set forth in the draft ordinance for the text amendment on landscaping regulations.
Motion by Commissioner Gherkin. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Commissioner Burchard. Can staff please call the roll?
Commissioner Burchett,
Yes.
Commissioner Fresteen,
Yes.
Commissioner Gherkin,
Yes.
Commissioner Modi,
Yes.
Chair Buckingham.
Yes. I believe the standards have been met and applaud the city for thinking progressively and continually looking to improve the code where it is needed. So I'm a yes, so that's 5 yeses and 0 nos, and the motion carries. And the motion for recommendation to approve is granted and will be forwarded to City Council for first reading on August 26th. That concludes matter 5. Now we're on to discussion items. Looks like there are none. Anything on staff report or what's to come?
Yes.
This heinous September meeting you've prepped us about?
Yeah, so I'll go in order with the memo if I could, and then
Sure, however
we'll
you
throw
wanna do
in one more. So again, Commissioner Sheehan resigned last month. We appreciate her service. I know Mayor Sonoyka is looking for a new person for that seat. I believe in a previous newsletter, she accepts folks that are interested can contact her. Contact information is on the website. There's a few reminders in the memo just about procedure if something goofy happens while there's an even number of folks. The Kirchhoff Road corridor study is the biggest part of why we think the September meeting might take a bit longer. So that's coming back to the City Council on August 26th. You might remember this group made a recommendation to approve that except for the transportation section. The council more or less deadlocked on that topic as well and decided to commission a traffic study. They'll hear the results of that traffic study on August 26th, and they'll be giving everyone direction on what to consider, where to go from there. We're making the legal notice for that, expecting that they'll send it to the Plan Commission in September. We expect that'll happen. And then even though it's not required, because we had to mail everything out in the previous go-arounds, we're mailing everything out one last time to tell people that this is back if they would like to pay attention, and there will be an email list sign up in there as well in case there's anything further to share with them. So for that reason, and because we've got 3 or 4 other items that might be coming to you in September right now, if there's availability to start a little bit earlier, we think that might help you guys out. The earliest time we've heard so far is 6:30, and so, Mr. Chairman, if I could, if everyone's available at 6:30, we can certainly start then and try to get you out of here a little earlier.
That should work for me.
It's fine.
As long as my train's on time. That's my condition. Yes, September 2nd. That's right after Labor Day, right?
Yeah.
I believe.
Maybe so.
Yes.
Yeah, Labor Day's first.
Yep.
It'll be a Tuesday.
I don't like thinking about that.
September 2nd.
It's going to be a good one. I
6.
think that works. I mean,
Like I said,
I
it
don't
all
know if Glenn will
depends
make
on,
it on
it all
time, but-
depends on my train.
Yeah.
I'll be here as soon as I can.
yeah, why don't we shoot for that?
Okay. There's a new, we like to share regional information with you. There's a new community data snapshot if you're interested in fun facts about Rolling Meadows. In the interest of time, I discouraged Ms. Gerstung from presenting her 50-slide presentation on this topic. I'm sure she'll give it to you another month, except she's right. She's also done at the end of this week with her service with the city. She'll be going back down to the University of Illinois, so we certainly appreciate her work this summer. It has showed up in tangible ways, and again, very much appreciated. I hope you will see her name here or elsewhere in the future.
I hope you come back.
Yeah, that was great.
Thank you.
Did a great job.
Thank you very much for your service.
Kirchhoff Road Corridor, one last note. Our 2 properties are out to RFP. We shared one of those via email with you. Both are on the city website. Might have seen it in the press. We're hoping, very optimistic for some folks that are interested in taking those properties and working with them. And then the last one, which we knew about last week, but which I was contractually obligated to keep secret, we brought back a little bit of zoning-related hardware on Monday. So the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus has this EV ready. Thank you, Jordan. You can hold yours up too, Rob, if you like. Does these EV ready community cohorts to recognize folks in Chicago that are helping with the electric vehicle transition. 17 communities, I think, were recognized in this third cohort. Maybe 40 or so have gone through. We're one of 4 in the life of the program that's come in at the gold level. So second highest in the history of the program. So it was a gold recognition recipients was Ups River Forest in Chicago. So anytime Mayor Brandon Johnson, Senator Dick Durbin, and your own Mayor Laura Sonoyka take the same stage at the same time, kind of cool, I suppose.
Wow.
So
awesome.
Job well done.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
What did it take to get those?
There is a lot of work that I'll let
Yeah.
Rob explain, and I'll tap back in at the end, I suppose. We'll talk the zoning part of it.
Yeah, I mean, the long and short of it was about 1,000 staff hours, and
Oh, that's it.
That's
It's
it.
worth it,
And you
though.
did all 1,000 of them, right?
I did a few of them at least. Yeah, so
The city paid you
the
overtime.
program involved a number of different kind of elements of planning and zoning and policy. So we had to. You'll remember the zoning code framework we worked with you on in earlier in the year, and then there was also a bunch of permitting and inspection framework that we had to develop, marketing and communications work, safety training for inspectors, and so there's quite a broad array of program to kind of administer across many departments. So it was quite a lot of work overall, but Glenn and I think dutifully got it done. maybe down to the wire, but it was a lot.
I pointed Rob in a direction. He sprinted in that direction, and then I took some of the credit at the end. But I kept pushing him in front of me at the awards ceremony. We bring this hardware here both because it's a cool recognition for the city, certainly a team effort. I mean, Rob did a lot of work on it, but our public works, our fire, I think maybe to our police, we're all involved in the parts of this.
That should go in the city's newsletter.
Oh, it will. Don't worry about that.
Okay, well, we'll look forward to you guys standing up in front of the photo.
Yeah, but it also is in part because of this committee's work. A big part of what got us over the finish line was that EV charging ordinance you guys touched at the start of the year. We had a chance we were shouted out. One of the plaques was really for how good that was, and part of that reflected your discussions, your deliberations. There were 2 not scripted rounds of applause during this thing. One of them was recognizing someone who had a baby, I should say, in the middle of doing all this. and the second was for our zoning code, which this is like mayors. These aren't necessarily zoning nerds, if you would. So it was interesting. It was a good little touch.
Wow.
So wanted to note that.
Very cool.
And that would conclude our report.
Thank you.
Great.
Awesome.
Sounds good. Anything else? Anybody? Great. Okay. Can I then have a motion to approve the adjournment of tonight's meeting?
I'll motion to approve the adjournment of the City of Rolling Meadows Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for Wednesday, August 6th, 2025.
Motion by Commissioner Gherkin. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Modi. By voice vote, all in favor, please state yes.
Yes.
Yes. All opposed, please state no. Motion carries and the meeting is adjourned as of 9:15 p.m. The commission's next meeting will be September 2nd at 6:30 p.m. Thanks and good night, everyone.
Good night.
I want to say thank you for hearing me, and you guys are amazing.